Hi everyone, I'm Shelly from There's No Place Like Home at redheadmom8.wordpress.com. Last week I brought to you the first of 4 large family homeschool hacks that I'm going to be sharing with you. Last week I talked to you about how I group and alternate my 10 homeschooled kids. This week I'm going to be talking to you about uncomplicated unit studies. Now, I know that there are a lot of people out there who get really intimidated by the thought of unit studies. They picture people, making underwater scuba tanks, which I might be being facetious, but there are people who do really complicated things. Or they picture you dissecting like cow eyeballs, which, okay, we actually did do a few years ago, but I made my husband do it. I didn't do it. But the point is that when a lot of people think of unit studies, they think of something that takes all this preparation and all this time and is really complicated. And I'm not going to lie to you. Unit studies really can be like that. So when it comes to having an extra large family, you need to learn how to make them as uncomplicated as possible. And it's easy, and they are such a big help in homeschooling because last week I did talk about grouping your kids, and when you group your kids, you can teach a number of them together, and unit studies are the way to go with doing that. So today I'm just going to give you 3 tips on how to keep your unit studies uncomplicated. My first tip to you is to use unit studies that are already pre-written. I know that there are a lot of moms out there who are just brilliant and have these wonderful imaginations and can just pull stuff together at the drop of a hat without pre-planning it all. They'll see their kids getting an interest in boats, so they'll take an impromptu trek to a boat race, and then they'll go to the library and get some boats, and then they'll do some experiments on floating and everything like that. And that's great. But realistically, when you have a lot of kids, unless you have tons and tons of energy, which I know a lot of us don't because it's tiring to have all these kids. I love it, but it's tiring. So we don't really have time to just pull things together like that. Pre-written unit studies are a godsend when it comes to that. And you can find them in so many different places. You can purchase ones like I talked to you about in other videos, the CONUS curriculum that we really like, 5 in a row. I know that there are a number of other unit studies that you can buy. We also did another great one called Case of Adventure, and we learned about Switzerland. And all you have to do is Google it, and you can find lots of pre-written unit studies that have everything written out for you, and all you have to do is choose the activities that you want to do. And with CONUS, they give you so many different topics too. It's not just one topic and they give you activities. There's a phone book size book, and there are 3 volumes to this, mind you. And we're working on the second one. We haven't done the third one yet. But anyway, there are so many topics that you can choose from, and it really takes a weight off of your shoulders because you have all these great things right in front of you. If you don't want to spend the money on them, and I don't blame you because I try to homeschool as frugally as possible, there are a lot of really great free unit studies online that you can find. If you actually follow me on Pinterest, I'll put the link at the bottom. I have a free unit studies board that you could always follow. And on my blog, I also have a free resources page. I've actually written about 4 unit studies. I'm actually in the midst of writing a 5th one. I'm writing a Harry Potter unit study right now. But I have those on my blog, so you're always welcome to go use those. I have a Greek mythology one, a Little House unit study, one on famous inventors and inventions, one on Thomas Edison, and a Thanksgiving one. So was that 4? I don't even know. I wasn't counting. But anyway, so pre-written ones are great. If you are very creative, you could always write your own unit study, but I would definitely write it beforehand, maybe when you're on break. The point is that you don't just want to pull everything together at the drop of a hat. That really does make things complicated. Use one that is already written out, and that way you can choose what you want to do. Which actually brings me to my second tip, which is don't go overboard. I know that there are tons and tons of great activities in these unit studies, but the fact of the matter is that you can't use all of them. And if you try to, you're going to drive yourself crazy, and your kids are probably going to get bored really fast. So don't do that. Don't try to do all of them. There are just some questions that you want to ask yourself when it comes to deciding which activities you want to use. Just think to myself, not to myself, to yourself, will my kids enjoy this? Will I enjoy this? How many activities per day can my kids comfortably handle? And how many activities per day can I comfortably handle? And I'm just going to stop right there for a minute, because that really is something that is so individual in your families. There are some families who are great at doing 4 or maybe even 5 unit study topics a day or activities a day, while there are other families, that even maybe 1 unit study activity a day would be enough. Our family typically does about 2 unit study activities per day, and that seems to be a good number for us. We did do 3 and sometimes 4 in the past, and that seemed to get a little bit tiring to my kids, and it started to show towards the end of the unit study. And the point of homeschooling is you want your kids to really enjoy learning so that they continue to be lifelong learners. So you just really want to take that into consideration. How many activities a day are comfortable for you and your kids? You also want to think, when you're picking up a unit study, is this going to add stress to our day? Because there are some unit studies that, as wonderful as they seem, they might just be a little bit too complicated, and you might just think to yourself, is this something that's the right fit for our family? Are we going to be able to handle this? If you feel that it's going to add stress to your day, I would really recommend that you might at least put it to the side and do it maybe in a different season of your life. I'm not saying that you have to totally not do it, but you really want to pick things that you can handle and that you can handle well, and that will be a hit with your kids also. Another question that you want to ask yourself with a unit study is, will this be too time consuming or expensive? And this goes right back to choosing the activities. There are a lot of activities in these books that really do take a lot of preparation. They take a lot of materials, and if you have, $100 a week to spend at Home Depot, for unit study activity materials, then go for it. Especially if you like doing that sort of thing, then go for it. I find that when we homeschool this many kids, we really need to try to keep our expenses as low as possible. So I usually tend to not do the more expensive activities unless it's something that I really, really, really know that the kids are going to like. Also, time consuming. Now, time is not an option for a lot of us large family homeschool moms. We don't have enough of it. But there are going to come times when you find an activity that is going to be time consuming, but you really think that your kids are going to like it. And if it is, by all means do that. But one tip that I would have for you with that is I would focus maybe on just that activity and give yourself even several days to do it. Don't just pair it with another activity or 2 more activities every day. Give yourself time, to take your time with it. Several years ago, we were learning about the medieval times with the CONUS unit study. I think it was CONUS Volume 1. And one of the activities was to have a medieval feast. And my kids were really interested in that. So what we did was we spent about 2 weeks preparing for just this medieval feast. Now, of course, they did math and everything, but otherwise, they just prepared for this medieval feast. They wrote up the recipes of the food that we would need. They made up little costumes, like little jester hats and things like that to wear. They found out what the different sorts of servants were called in those times, like carvers and servitors and all of that. They learned how to sing the wassail song. Because they were also performing in the midst of our courses. They were going to be performing. So they really spent a lot of time preparing it, and we loved it. And to this day, if you ask my kids, at least the ones that are old enough to remember, what their favorite thing was about our unit studies, they will tell you the medieval feast. So yeah, that is one activity that was time consuming. And yeah, it did cost some because we had to go out and get food and everything for it. But it was awesome, and it was not stressful because we focused solely on that for a while. So that is another option that you have as well. And another thing with unit studies that you want to ask yourself with going overboard is, am I doing this only because it's on Pinterest? Look, I'm on Pinterest. I love Pinterest, and there's lots of really nice stuff on Pinterest. But I assure you that the vast majority of the people who are doing all of these awesome crafts and activities do not have 10 kids or 11 kids or even 6 kids, so you have to keep that in mind. If you're doing it just because you saw it on Pinterest and you kind of feel like, oh, I'm not doing enough. Look at that family. They're doing all this awesome stuff. You're doing great. You don't need to do stuff on Pinterest. Simplicity works best. I found, at least, simplicity works best in a large family homeschool. So let me just give you that reassurance. My final tip for you today will be, don't be redundant. Okay, what I mean by that is most people who use unit studies also supplement with a language arts and math curriculum. And since unit studies are cross-curricular, they literally cover every single subject that there is. Now, not every day, obviously. They're not going to cover every single subject every day. But as you go through a unit study, they are going to hit on the different subjects. So what I do with my kids is, if I find that our activities are incorporating math, like, for example, if they have to do some measuring, or if they're going to be baking, or if they're just, say, for example, calculating the diameter of the earth, things like that, we don't do our math book for the day. And the kids love that, and I love that, because it's kind of like a break for us, and the kids are always happy when I say, hey guys, we're doing math in our unit study today. They cheer, because they know that means no math. And they like Life of Fred math, but I think any kid is going to cheer when they know that they have a little less work for the day. So don't be redundant. There's no reason. If your unit study is covering math, don't do your math book. It's fine. And the sky is not going to come falling down if you do not do your math book for the day. So keep that in mind. Also, the same thing with language arts. A lot of unit studies incorporate lots of writing. The writing of lists, the writing of reports, the writing of stories. Some of the unit studies that we do will actually have the kids write sentences and then underline, the nouns and the adverbs and, that sort of thing. And if your unit study is covering language arts, don't do your language arts curriculum for the day. Same thing as with math. And my kids especially love the days that our unit study is covering both math and language arts. Right, Kaylin? Yeah, she's nodding her head, yes. But she's my cameraman. Anyway, she's glaring at me now. Anyway, my kids love when they don't have those extra supplemental books for the day, because you know what? Kids get tired too, parents get tired, and it's very comforting to know that you're still covering these required subjects in your unit study, and you don't even have to do anything extra in order to do that. It all ties in together, and it's really great. So these are the tips that I have for you on keeping your unit studies uncomplicated. Don't let them intimidate you. You have to, just as with everything else, you have to learn to tailor it to your family's needs. And keep in mind that as a mom of many, you've already got a lot on your plate. So give yourself grace and only do what is going to work for you and your family. Have a great day.